This is an interview with Lowell Q. Hamilton. The date is August 24th, 1990. That part of Idaho is near Indian reservations. So you had a lot of contact with Indians. You want to tell about that?
Yeah, we used to have Indians in there all the time, and they were sometimes they were a problem. The men used to come in, and they wanted to buy bay rum, and they didn't put it on their hair; they drank it. So we wouldn't sell them bay rum because we knew what they wanted it for. But the bums would. The bums would buy it, and then they'd go out in the back alley and all drink it together. Let's see. What else?
About the Indians?
Oh, the Indians, yeah.
What did the squaws
The old squaws came in, and they were dressed in the ancient get-up. I don't think they were changed one iota from the time that of the early settlers arrived there, because they'd come in their moccasins and their old filthy clothes, a blanket wrapped around them, and with their kids strapped to their back. And then they come in and they sit down in the store on the floor and take their kid off and feed him right in the middle of the store.
So they breastfed the kid right there.
They were sometimes they would disrupt things, so we'd go over and kind of give them a little kick with our foot, and they'd just grunt.
So I bet today you wouldn't see anything like that. The
No.
Indians would be totally different. Huh?
Yeah, out on the reservation, they were still sleeping in teepees.
And what date was this?
This was 1933.
Where did you live in Pocatello, Idaho?
In Pocatello,
This time?
when I first arrived there, I got me a room in a rooming house, and but I only stayed there a few weeks, and then my sister and I got a room in a hotel. It was a Riverside hotel, and we got adjoining rooms there. And we stayed there for quite a while. Then my sister and I decided to go into a boarding house, but I didn't like the boarding house. So I moved out and went into a different boarding house with a bunch of boys. And I stayed there until I was married. This boarding house was run by an old woman by the name of Clark. And she took good care of us. She used to do my washing and feed me and take good care of me. I think I paid her $27 a month, or it'd have to be $27 a month.
Yeah. You met some people there that later became important in Save on Drugs.
Yes, I boarded with this man by the name of, he was a kid then, by the name of Dick Brown. And we boarded together, and later on he worked in a grocery store, and he worked in the grocery store that was owned by a man by the name of Call. And later on, this Call and Dick Brown came to California and started the Save on Drugs that you see all over the place today. But Dick Brown opened the first Save on Drugs, and he was later president of it.
Didn't they ask you to work for them later on?
Yes, this C.J. Call was his name, the owner of it. After they opened their first store in San Bernardino, the next store was in Inglewood, and at that time I was the manager of the Crest store in Inglewood, and C.J. Call offered me a job to go with them, and I felt real secure at that time, and I didn't take him up on his offer. But you often wonder whether I should or whether I shouldn't have.
It's hard to tell. What girls did you go with at this date?
At the Crest store? Oh, I had a good old time at Cress's.
You weren't supposed to go out with any of the girls.
No, that's the rule of the store was that you didn't go out with any of the help. But I was trimming windows there, and right across the street was a theater. And the girl that sold the tickets at the theater used to go to school with me, but I never had anything to do with her at school. But she decided she wanted to go out with me, so she had some friend that I knew arrange a date. Her name was Louise Woffington. And I went out with her a couple of times and even went over to her home, had dinner and so on. But I couldn't get interested in her. But then later on I went out with a girl by the name of Helen Johnson. And I went with her for quite a while. But I never got serious with her. Then one day Lola came in. Now she already had Kress experience. So the manager at Kress's, by the name of Purser, gave her a job. And that's when I met her. I'm going to have a drink here.
She wasn't an assistant cashier there, though.
No.
She was working on the candy counter, was it? Or?
That's where they put her to work, was on the candy counter. But after that, she worked all over the store, building counters, and then after I took her out a few times, we began to go steady, and the boss didn't like that at all, so he dismissed her. And she went down the street and went to work for Newberry's. And it just so happened that the manager at Newberry's, in later years, I met him in 1963. I met him, and he was instrumental in getting me into Brett's.
You never can tell, huh?
No. But at that, in my association with Lola, while she was working there, I became quite close friends with this man by the name of Wheatley.
Tell about the dances in Pocatello.
We used to go to the dance gardens every Saturday night. I think everybody went to the dance. That was the thing to do. And about half of them got drunk.
You couldn't drink there. What do you mean? How could they get drunk? This is prohibition.
Oh, that didn't slow you down. They had a bootlegger on every corner. But we used to go. I shouldn't put this on tape because it's kind of a confession. But I remember going to the bootlegger and getting a bottle of Rotgut whiskey and supposedly enjoying myself for the evening. But along came prohibition, the end of prohibition, and it disappeared. It wasn't fun anymore. It was too easy. It disappeared from the dance hall. Before, the restrooms used to be full of drunks that couldn't make it out. Mm-hmm. And they just disappeared. It cleaned up right away.
So it was a good thing to get rid of that.
That's right.
Prohibition then.
Mm-hmm.
Huh. Did you have a favorite restaurant that you went out to?
Oh, yes. Lola and I used to go to this. It was a Chinese restaurant. But actually, I used to, when I was living in a hotel, I used to eat most of my meals there. But we had one favorite dish at this restaurant, and that was breaded veal cutlets. Man, they were good. And I've never tasted them since that tasted so good.
They didn't have any fast food places back in those days.
No. The closest thing to a fast food place back in that day was they had these root beer stands, but they weren't smart enough to have hamburgers with them. They just sold root beer.
Were they A&W?
A&W, uh-huh.
Yeah, I remember those in Utah when I was in college. Tell about your getting married to Mom.
Oh. Well, I'll have to go back and tell you about getting engaged to her. I was having lunch with her one day, and I just gave her ring in a box. Said, "Here, I hope you like it." Wasn't very romantic, but she was glad to get it. But anyway, in October of 1935, and we've been going together about a year. October 21st to be exact. We left early in the morning of the 21st and took a bus to Salt Lake City. And why we went to Salt Lake, I don't know. It was just the place to go, I guess. We went to Salt Lake City, and we was married in the city and county building. And we were married by a Mormon bishop. And he gave us a good talking to. But we, after we were married, we got us a room in a hotel called the Hotel Little. And then we went out to dinner and had us a deluxe dinner. I remember that. It was kind of a French restaurant, and the waiter stood there right by us all the time we were eating, kept our glass filled, and it was super service. But we enjoyed that. Then we went shopping and bought us a radio, and this radio was with us several years. And Larry, I'm sure, remembers this radio.
Tell about your apartment and your vacation.
Oh,
you already had an apartment
yeah.
set up beforehand.
We had an apartment set up beforehand, and it was at 305 West Buell in Pocatello, and it was within walking distance of the store. It was a two-room apartment. One room was a kitchen, and it was quite a large room, and the other room was a combination bedroom and living room. But we enjoyed that very much. We had our radio in there, and
how about your landlord? He was a pretty nice guy.
Oh yeah, our landlord, his name was Hartvigsen, and he was a railroad engineer, but he was a real nice old guy. And he loaned us his car. We didn't have a car. He loaned us his car to go on vacation. And we went up into the Salmon River country. Lola's dad had a mine claim up there, and we went up there and spent, I guess a week or two helping him work his mine. But it was really up in the wilds. But we enjoyed it very much. But he let us have his car for that vacation. So today I don't think I'd loan anybody my car to go on a trip up into the mountains. No. But he did, and he was really a nice guy. He kind of adopted us. And I remember later on when Lola became pregnant, he gave us a month's rent because of the fact that she got pregnant.
Once you were married, did you think seriously about starting a family?
Oh yeah. Lola wanted a baby in the worst way. She just couldn't wait. And I remember one day she came down to the store, and this was several months after we were married. She came down to the store and she was all dressed up. It makes me emotional to think about it. But she was all dressed up, and she was crying. And I went down there, and what she was crying about was the fact that she thought she was pregnant and she wasn't. And she was just heartbroken. But in 2 or 3 months, she became pregnant. And 9 months later, we had Larry.
Which is me.
Which is you. But she wanted a baby so bad. And when she got one, she enjoyed them so much.
Tell a little bit about being transferred to California and the ride that you took to get to California.
Oh, that was a day in our life I'll never forget. Well, anyway, we were transferred to Stockton, California, and the manager I had wouldn't let me go from the store until an hour before I was to catch the train. And if it hadn't have been for Lola's dad, and actually my mother helped a lot too, we'd have never got moved. But we got everything moved, and we caught the train in Pocatello at night, and this is in February of 1937. And it was cold and snowing when we left. And we took the train to Ogden and then transferred to another train and headed out across the Nevada desert heading for Sacramento. And I'll never forget that ride. We rode in a Pullman car and we had our own berth, and when we wanted to relax we could go out in the observation car. But I'll never forget laying there and listening to the sound of the rails going clickety-clack, clickety-clack. And so it was really a new experience. It seemed like California was the other side of the earth to us. And I remember looking out the window and watching the desert go by. And I remember watching as we came up over the Sierras with all the snow. We went up over Donner's Pass and then dropping down into Sacramento that was beautifully green, beautiful all around there. And we changed trains at Sacramento and caught another train to Stockton. And we arrived there during a heat wave. And you can imagine what we looked like with our overcoats and galoshes.
You were carrying those.
Yes. But I'll never forget all that.
So it seemed like you were on a different planet in California.
Mm-hmm.
You've arrived in California now, in Stockton, California. Who was the manager of the Crest store?
Well, the manager of the Crest store there was a man by the name of Walter Zerker. And he was really a nice guy. And he took his brand new beautiful automobile and took us all around to help us find a place to live.
It was a Cadillac, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a big, beautiful Cadillac. And but he just took good care of us all the while we were there. He was that way. He also gave us permission to buy an automobile, which every place else that I was, they frowned on automobiles because they wanted us to concentrate on the work.
Imagine telling an employee that today.
Yes, wouldn't that be something?
They tell you to get lost. You did get a few little freebies, like Easter eggs. I tell about
Oh, yes. Well, when I went to work there, I seemed to fit in real good, and I was successful there. And one thing I especially remember was at Easter time, when the Easter season was over, the manager used to let the employees have all the Easter eggs, or anything Easter that was left, he'd give it to the employees. And I remember taking home bags full of these cream Easter eggs, and I see the same ones on the market today, and man, were they good. And I know that Larry and Lynda can remember those to this day.
When did you buy your first car?
Well, it was probably about 1937. It was in 1937. We bought it not too long after we arrived in Stockton, and we bought a 1931 Chevrolet. And I remember taking that car apart and putting it all back together. I put new pistons in it, new rings in it, and the whole bit.
Where did you learn how to do that?
Well, the cars in that day were simple, and I learned how to do that with our old cars the old Fords we used to have.
Your dad showed you how to do that?
I think my brothers showed me how to do it, but we could take them apart and put them back together and make them run. So I tried it with this car, and it worked good, but I only kept that car for about a year or maybe a year and a half. And then I bought a 1936 Plymouth. See, that was a late model at that time. Plymouth, and that was a real good car.
How much did it cost?
Well, the Chevrolet, I think, cost $150, but that was a lot of money to us. And exactly what the Plymouth cost, I don't recall, but I remember our monthly payment was $27 and either 51 cents or 61 cents a month.
How much money were you making at the time?
I was making, when I was in Stockton as an assistant there, $135 a month. But we probably paid about $25, $30 for our rent. So.
How much did some of the other things cost, like going out to dinner and things like that at that time?
Well, you could get a milkshake for 10 cents. I remember that.
How about a movie? How much did it cost?
Movie, 50 cents. I remember the both of us could go to a show for $1. I remember one time Lola and I were on our way to the show. We just had $1 left of our week's wages. And we were going to go to the show, and we stopped to talk to someone. And I had that $1 in my pocket. And I had the habit then of rolling things up that was in my pocket. And I took that $1 and rolled it up and threw it away. And so when we got up to the theater, no $1. But I retraced my steps back to where we were, and there it was in the gutter. So we still got to go to the movie. Haircut was about 35 cents then.
Back on the movies, did most people go to the movies once a week, or was?
You went to the movies. That was, yeah, that was. They were popular. What else was there?
There were some pretty good movies then too.
Yes.
Starting to have color.
Yes, they were having color then. And they had sound then. I remember back the old days that they didn't have sound. When I was a kid, we used to go to the movies and they were silent. And I remember my first movie that had talking in it was when I came to Salt Lake City in about 1928.
You had some experience with some robbers. You want to tell about?
Oh, yeah. Well, one Sunday.
This is in Stockton, right?
This is in Stockton. One Sunday, Lola and I went down to the store. And I guess Larry was there too. I can't really remember. But we went in the store and bought some cookies and fooled around in the store for about an hour. And then we left. And the next day I found out that the store had been robbed.
Wow.
Some robbers had come in there and they had used a acetylene torch to cut the safe. They cut a hole right through the safe and they removed the money through that hole. But they never did catch them. They came through a window in the side of the stockroom, and I guess they left that way.
You went on a few trips at this time, like to San Francisco, and I think in Yosemite.
Oh, yeah.
Describe those?
Well, not too long after we got there, the church looked us up. No, I hadn't been active in the church at all. Lola wasn't too active either. But one day there was a knock at the door, and the bishop of the local ward was at the door, and he was a nice guy, and he invited us out to church. And there was a couple of families there at church that really took a hold of us, and we didn't have a car, so they took us, and we went to San Francisco, which we had never seen. They took us to Yosemite and took us all over the country, and we really enjoyed these people. So that's how we got involved in church again.
San Francisco was probably the biggest city you'd ever seen.
I'd never seen the ocean before. and San Francisco, yes. And it wasn't too long after that that they had the World's Fair there, and I remember going to that and the opening of the bridges. Yeah, San Francisco was something, and Yosemite was something to see back in that day. Of course, back then you could drive through Yosemite. Now you can't.
Who was your manager in Stockton? You had two of them, right?
Yeah, I had.
Besides,
Soon after, about a year after I was there, Mr. Zerker was transferred to San Francisco, and there was a man by the name of Nelson who took over management. But he was a friend of Mr. Zerker, so I got along as just about the same with him as I did with Mr. Zerker. He was really a pleasure to work for, both of them. And we become very friendly with this new manager by the name of Nelson. We used to play tennis with him, and we spent one vacation with him at Balboa Beach, swimming at the beach. Later on, years later, in about when was that? 1956, he came to visit Lola and I when we were in the hospital. That's the last I've ever seen of him.
I think you mentioned Bishop Hanson. So you started going to church in Stockton really for the first time since your dad became disillusioned with the church.
Mm-hmm.
There, right?
See, when the bishop dumped my dad, he was bitter against the church. So consequently, I didn't go to church either. And from the time I left Sugar City, I never went inside of a church until Lola and I went to church in Stockton.
You want to tell a little bit about me being born, Larry being born?
Mm-hmm. Well, you were born September the 8th, 1937. And Lola had a hard time with Larry. She was in labor for about 36 hours. But everything, both of them were fine. And I remember the expense of the doctor, the preliminary expense and the hospital, or the doctor hospital expense was $50. It costs you $1,000 today.
Hard to do that today, yeah.
Yeah. But we took him home in our Chevrolet, I remember. That was the first car we ever had. And then we took him to the store, and they made a big to-do over both of them at the store. Do you remember the store?
Not in Stockton, no.
Mm-hmm.
I do in Santa Barbara, though. Did you make any trips back to Idaho to see what it was like back there after you were in California?
Yeah, when we got this 36 Plymouth, we made trips back. And one time we made a trip back and Larry got sick. And we had a heck of a time. But we finally got him there. And
Okay, now how about leaving Stockton for Santa Barbara? You got transferred, I guess. You want to tell a little bit about that and going from there to...
Yes, in 1940. This was in February of 1940. I was transferred to Santa Barbara, and this was my first store. I was an assistant at Stockton, but I was going to be the manager of the store at Santa Barbara. I remember traveling there in our 1936 Plymouth. I remember arriving there with Larry and Lola, and we stayed in a hotel the first night. Probably stayed there a couple of nights. But the next morning I met the district man, and I spent some time with him before going to the store, and then finally we went to the store.
Well, what did he discuss with you?
Well,
little tips on the trade?
yeah, how to do it. But I was trying to remember who he was. I think his name was Pixley. But then after he got through instructing me at the hotel, he took me to the store, and he stayed there with me about 2 days and then turned it over to me. And before he left, I was practically a nervous wreck. But as soon as he left, then I settled down and enjoyed it. In the meantime, Lola went out looking for a house to live in. And some real estate man took her around, and she picked out a house. I didn't have anything to do with it. But she picked out this house and bought some furniture because I was busy with the store. And when our furniture arrived, then we had a real nice house to live in. And this house, later, about 50 years later, Larry and I visited, and it was almost identical to what it was then.
It's a time warp, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Even the plants were the same.
Yeah. Well, while we lived there, we had taken photographs of the house and of the neighbors' houses. So when we made this visit, this was in 1990, when we made this visit, we photographed the houses again, the neighbors' houses and our house, and they were almost identical.
Between 1940 and
1990, 50 years.
50 years, huh?
Even the plants around them looked the same. I'll take a drink of water here. Okay.
Okay, the garage had a washroom attached to it in Santa Barbara, didn't it? You want to describe that a little bit? What was that for?
Well, right attached to the garage was a washroom. And of course, we had our washer out there, and we didn't have any dryers in that day. But that was a kind of a utility room. And when we looked at this place in 1990, it was still there. But I'll never forget when Easter came along, we put Larry's Easter basket in that room, and by mistake we shut the door and it locked. So he was out looking for his Easter basket, and he happened to look through the window and saw it inside the washroom. And he come running into the house and to us, and he says, "That damned Easter bunny locked my Easter basket in the washroom." But we had lots of good times in Santa Barbara.
How about going to church there? You met in a little house.
Yeah, it was just a branch there, and we had a branch president, and we enjoyed it very much there. It was kind of a big, happy family, and I remember the missionaries that were there at that time used to come out to our house practically every Saturday, and they'd wash their clothes in our washer. Then they'd stay for dinner. So, but we enjoyed them. I often wonder where those people are today, and if they remember that.
You made a lot of friends in Santa Barbara, and you had some real nice neighbors. You want to describe your friends?
Yes.
Neighbors at that time? You still know some of them.
Yes. Well, right across the street was an old lady by the name of O'Reilly, and she was real nice to us while we were there. And she had a daughter that lived there, and she was a school teacher. But just to the right of her lived a family by the name of Plesha, and they were real good friends of ours while we were there. And Lola has heard from those people every Christmas since. Up to this day, we get word from them, and they now live in Bishop, California. But just a couple of blocks away from us lived Alta Kent, was her name in that day. Alta and Earl was his name. And they had a daughter by the name of Pauline. And Pauline was the babysitter for Larry. And so those two, Pauline, well, I might say this, that along about 1960-something, Earl died suddenly. But Alta is a very good friend to this day, and also Pauline is a very good friend. So those are friends of over 50 years. I talked to Alta just the other day.
Yeah, I saw her too not too long ago.
She's 80-something now.
One of the new things to you when you arrived in California was the phenomenon of the earthquake.
Oh,
I think you have your first experience with
yeah.
the earthquake.
I'll never forget that. We were asleep in bed at night when it hit, and I swear it was tearing the house apart. And we had Venetian blinds, and they were wildly swinging, and I jumped out of bed and told Lola, hurry up and get out of there before the house fell down. But it held together. But I went down to the store, and the store was a total mess. I went down to the stockroom, and where we had glassware stacked in the bins, it was, without exception, was laying on the floor in a big broken heap. It was a big mess. And I was down there the following day observing the damage, and an aftershock came, and I got out of there in a hurry. Because for one thing, those stock bins were just sitting there, and they could tip over.
We saw the Crest store. We went there too, besides your house.
Yes, when we in 1990, when Larry and I went there, he photographed the old Crest store, what was left of it. But you could see where the stock bins were. The columns were still there, where the fans were attached, and you could see where the counters were and the shelves were.
They were converted into a shopping mall.
Mm-hmm. But they were keeping the old building, but they were converting it at that time. So by now it's gone. So I'm glad Larry got photographs of it. But I had a lot of experiences there. The war started there, and it was really a complete new experience.
Didn't Mom's folks come and visit you while you were there? We
Yes.
had some pictures of that.
Yes, they came to California. I think they were coming down to check out the work in the California area, but they visited us there in Santa Barbara, and I remember Lola's mother and Keith and Genevieve and the dog. I don't remember her dad.
Tippy.
Yeah, the dog Tippy.
I don't think he was there. He didn't get in the photographs anyway.
No, I didn't. I don't remember him. He may have been trying to get a job someplace. But they had him quite a nice car then, and they later located in just off of Inglewood.
About this time, you made another trip back to Idaho, didn't you? And your dad died at that time?
Oh, yes. We made a trip back to Idaho, and we left Larry with my folks, and then we went up to Yellowstone. But after we were through at Yellowstone, we came back, and my dad was very ill, and about 3 days later, he died. So we stayed there while he was for his funeral and for his burial. And I remember leaving my mother at that time, and how she must have felt. But Thelma lived nearby.
So your mother continued to live there for quite some time.
Yeah, she stayed there quite a while, and then exactly how long, I don't know, but it was several years. Then she moved to Jerome, Idaho, where my brother managed a business. She was there for a few years, and then she moved to Lompoc, California, where my sister Thelma was.
While you went on this trip, though, even though we lost one life, we gained another life.
Yep.
So a new life.
It was all
at that time. You want to describe that?
Yeah, it was while we were on this trip that Lola became pregnant, and 9 months later, Lynda was born.
Describe
So-
Mom's reaction to that.
Well, she was just elated. She was so happy that she had a boy and a girl, and she loved her kids so much.
She used to make a lot of clothes, I know, for all of us. She had about, how many, 14 different suits for me?
Yeah, she made clothes for Larry and
Short pants,
Lynda, and
short pants.
and they were the best dressed kids in town.
Okay, she didn't have much of a problem giving birth to Lynda, did she?
No, when Lynda was born, there was nothing to it.
Second time is the charm.
Mm-hmm. No, she was here before we hardly knew what was going on, and we never had. There was just no trouble at all. She was home before we knew it.
This was in April 1942.
April 17, 1942.
It was about this time the United States got into World War II. You said that you were in Santa Barbara when
Yeah.
the United States got into World War II. You want to describe your reaction to the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor?
Well, I was out in the backyard when we got the news, and of course it was a shock. And it was a couple of weeks later, or a short time later, that a Japanese submarine surfaced and shelled one of the oil installations just up the coast a ways, a short ways. And we had our first blackout. And that was a real scary situation.
What's a blackout now?
Well, all lights were extinguished. Everything was out. You weren't supposed to show any lights at all. And my store lights were on downtown, so the police called me and told me to get on down there and turn the lights out. Before I go down there, I should say that we were collected in an inner hallway with a night light on and the doors closed so that no light could get out. And it was an eerie feeling. But I had to go down to the store because the store lights were on, the window lights. And I remember going down through that pitch dark night with no lights on, no lights any place, no moon, no nothing. And I finally got down there, though. But down there, and there was a crowd gathering because of those lights. And I got the lights turned off, and if I feel that if I hadn't got them turned off right away, that they'd have broke the window and turned them off. But
could you see searchlights in the sky?
well, that came a little bit later as the war progressed. You see those searchlights searching through the sky for anything they could find, and they had them going all the time.
Were there air raid sirens going?
When the blackout came and we had that one attack, the sirens were. It's an eerie sound.
I haven't heard that sound for a long time.
No, I haven't either, except maybe in a show or something.
Yeah.
But that was some experience.
And did you have to black out some of the things in your store?
So, yes, after the light experience I had, I never turned the lights on anymore. Of course, I wasn't allowed to. But we had transoms up above the show windows, and we had to cover those with black tar paper, and we had skylights we had to cover with black tar paper. So no lights were shown. And then the street lights, they would black them out on the seaward side so that anyone in the ocean couldn't see.
Didn't you have a civil defense job too?
Yeah, I was given a fire watch job, which meant that you had to be up on the roof in case of an attack and watch for fire bombs and extinguish them. We kept sand up there all the time. You're supposed to extinguish fire bombs.
They used to make war movies down at the
Yes.
harbor. You want to tell about that?
It was really quite something. They made war movies down in the harbor. I took the district man down there with me one day to watch them, and they had these war boats or copies of war boats, of battleships and so on, with their guns, and these little guns were spouting fire. So they made war movies down there with these models of about 10 feet long.
Once the war started, a lot of merchandise became pretty scarce. You want to describe that?
Yeah, especially nylons. Towels were hard to get too. But I remember many times getting nylons in, and nylons were so wanted that I remember this one time especially that I got in a shipment of nylons and put them on sale, and the word spread and people lined up out the door and halfway up the block. About when they got half taken care of, I ran out, and I thought those women were going to scalp me. So after that, to protect myself, I put a sign in the window telling them that I was putting them on sale and how many I had, so that if they didn't get there, it was, they could judge by the crowd whether they were going to get any.
How did the government control prices at that time?
Well, it was natural because of the scarcity of merchandise that people would that owned the business would kind of want to get extra money out of their merchandise, but the government put on a price freeze, and they established this organization by the OPA, the Office of Price Administration, and they wouldn't allow you to raise the price.
Okay, I